Okay, let's talk about something that could save you a ton of precious time and energy in the gym while improving your performance on the mats as a jiu-jitsu athlete or other grappling sport athlete. And let's start with a quick question. The question is, are you clear exactly why you're doing each part of your training program? Because if you're like most grapplers and jiu-jitsu athletes that I've worked with, you're probably investing precious time and energy into some areas that might not be giving you the most return. And the truth is, with the limited time and recovery capacity we have as grapplers, we can't afford to waste energy on training methods that don't deliver direct results. So today I'm going to share a simple framework I use with my clients and myself to ensure that every minute is spent training off the mats in a way that translates to tangible improvements in performance and injury resilience. So let's get real about what training in the gym can actually accomplish and what the menu of training options we have actually looks like. When we cut through all the marketing hype and fancy exercise variations, we're really only developing a few basic physical qualities off the mats. Strength and body composition, your ability to generate force and your muscle to fat ratio. Aerobic fitness, your body's capacity to deliver and utilize oxygen efficiently, which is what you probably know as cardio. Your range of motion or flexibility in the positions your body can safely access and control. And then speed and coordination, your neuromuscular efficiency and movement quality. That's pretty much it. Every exercise you do, every workout you complete is basically going to just be able to develop some combination of those qualities. And the question is, which ones actually matter for your jiu-jitsu and which ones are important to focus on and work on in terms of your potential to get a return on your investment in those things. So let's dig a little deeper into this topic and talk about training ceilings. So not all physical qualities have equal potential for improvement, and this insight should have a big impact on the choices you make when deciding how to structure your training. Some qualities have what we can call a lower adaptation ceiling, meaning that they, even with tremendous effort and consistency, you might only be able to improve them by 5 to 10%. And others have a higher adaptation ceiling where the same amount of investment of time and energy might yield a much greater percentage of improvement. So think about it this way. If you're an adult who's been training jiu-jitsu for a few years, how much can you realistically improve your maximum flexibility? The answer is going to vary from person to person, but it's not a ton, maybe 20%, 15%, 10%, something like that. The structural limitations you have on your joints, the adaptations from decades of movement patterns and genetic factors, they just create a lower ceiling in general. It's a quality that you can't increase as much. You still can increase it, and it varies from person to person. And even small improvements in range of motion can make a big difference for people if that's exactly what they need, and we'll talk about that later. But the point is that it has a relatively lower adaptation ceiling compared to other qualities, such as improving strength, muscle mass and body composition, and aerobic fitness. Those would be the things that have a much higher ceiling for improvement, especially if you've never trained them consistently, but even if you have, in general, they have a much higher adaptation ceiling or potential for adaptation. This means you could spend months diligently working on some type of stretch to gain an extra 5 degrees of hip flexion that might not impact your game a ton, or you could spend the same time developing the strength and control and some ranges of motion and potentially doubling your ability to generate force in those areas and apply techniques more effectively, or increase the amount of muscle mass, aerobic fitness, etc. So the point is that the difference in the return on investment can be massive depending on what quality you're working on. So how do you actually determine what's worth training? Let's start with a few simple questions. What do you actually need to improve? And this requires an honest self-assessment, not just copying what is working for other people or following generic programs. The limitations that you personally experience in your jiu-jitsu are a great guidepost for structuring your training. And answering this question might involve simply reflecting on what positions you struggle with when you're rolling. And struggling meaning struggling physically, not just technique-based, because technical problems are often going to need technical solutions in jiu-jitsu, and that's a separate discussion. Also noticing what body parts get consistently sore or injured more often, identifying where you get tired and when you get tired during rolling, and recognizing which movements feel more restricted or weak or limited, like you can't trust a certain body part or certain joint position. Maybe you're getting swept because you lack core or back strength to maintain a position. Maybe your guard passing is suffering because you gas out faster than you should. Maybe you're missing training sessions because you have back pain and just joint pain in your hips or something like that after every class. So these specific limitations are going to be personal, and they're going to tell you exactly where you should address and what will give you a bigger return on your investment more than any generic training program probably would. Now, the next question we want to consider is what qualities can you significantly improve with a significant return on investment? Once you've identified your personal limitations, you need to determine which ones have the highest potential for improvement. And this is where understanding some of that conversation about adaptation ceilings that we had earlier is useful. So for most jiu-jitsu athletes, the highest return on investment areas are going to be, like we mentioned earlier, general strength and specific jiu-jitsu strength, body composition, local muscular endurance in some key areas, as well as strength in those key areas, aerobic capacity that supports recovery between your rounds and between sessions. And these qualities typically have a high adaptation ceiling for most people, meaning you can make substantial improvements with reasonable training investments. Keep in mind that training experience does matter here. If you already have a very high level of strength or muscle mass, for example, you're closer to that ceiling and you therefore may have less of a return on your investment with that when compared to other qualities that you might have developed less, even if in general, for most people, that quality is lower. So I don't want you to think that strengthening is always the answer and stretching is never the answer, but it's important to kind of take stock of what areas might have a higher return on an investment. And that's relative to just in general where the human body has a greater adaptation to improve in, but also personally what your history is like. So if you're super strong and muscular, maybe improving your range of motion in a certain joint is actually a much more valuable use of your time. So to just emphasize that, again, training experience matters here. If you already have a very high level of strength or muscle and you're closer to that ceiling in that particular quality, you might have a bit less of a return on your investment when trying to progress those qualities further, and it might matter less for your jiu-jitsu game as well. So this is where a personalized assessment matters. And this brings me to a critical point that many jiu-jitsu practitioners overlook. Your recovery capacity is finite. Every physical investment, whether it's hard rolling session, a strength workout, or a mobility routine, draws from the same recovery resources. And as grapplers, we're already significantly invested in the energy into our technical training and our time on the mats. And this means that supplemental work needs to deliver maximum return for a minimal investment as best as possible. We just need to be making slightly better and more accurate training decisions than just people that their only outlet is lifting weights and working out in the gym. They're going to have a much greater margin for error, which is fine. It's good. And we just need to be more careful and more calculated about those decisions because they're not our main priority. They're not our main investment. And so this is why focusing on higher ceiling adaptations is going to be crucial. If you're going to invest that limited recovery and energy and resources, you want to get the biggest possible return on investment. Could not say that well. Hopefully that was comprehensible. So here's a quick practical summary of how to apply these ideas. So step number one is conducting an honest assessment of your physical limitations in grappling and ask yourself, where do I get tired first when I'm rolling? Which positions do I struggle to maintain? What movements feel more restricted or weak? Which body parts get sore or injured more often during training or in between training sessions? Step number two is identify which of those limitations might have the highest adaptation ceiling. You can consider the info that I put forth earlier in the video. You can do your own research, and you should also consider your own history because everybody's unique. And in general, strength and muscle gain have a higher ceiling than flexibility and coordination training, but maybe not if you're already super big and strong. Likewise, aerobic capacity has a very high ceiling, but maybe not if you've already developed that to a huge degree. And I should note here that the highest ceiling for improving your jiu-jitsu in almost all cases is going to be technical improvement. But likewise, if you're super duper technical and you just have terrible fitness, terrible strength and aerobic fitness, that might actually be, you might be closer to your ceiling in technical development. You might actually have much better return on investment on some fitness stuff. But for most people, technique is going to be king. And obviously we're talking about other ways to improve off the mats as well, and things that are going to support and supplement your ability to keep getting better technique by being able to train uninjured and train better and longer. And step number three is design your supplemental training off the mats to focus primarily on those high ceiling adaptations that address your limitations that you just identified. So just some quick closing thoughts. It's important to get clear on why you're doing each part of your training program, as this clarity will help you to eliminate what's not serving you and what's not working and double down on what actually delivers results, which is more important for jiu-jitsu people. We need to be more careful about where we're putting our energy. We have a tighter budget for that stuff since we're already kind of involved in spending in other areas compared to just general population people that just want to get fitter and stronger. Grinding yourself down and pushing through injuries and poor recovery is not hardcore. It's just simply a lack of thinking strategically. So Be smart about where you invest your energy. It's not lazy, it's strategic, and it's going to serve you in the long run. In a sport as demanding as Jiu Jitsu or other grappling sports, the strategy of how you structure your training over time matters a lot. It's not just about your ability to push yourself hard each day to day. Having a long-term plan will allow you to develop yourself much further. If you want to learn more about how to become a better grappler using tried and true effective strength and conditioning and mobility training methodologies, check out the link in the description for my Grappler's Resilience and Performance Guide. It's a comprehensive program and course that includes assessment protocols, customizable training templates, exercise libraries, as well as direct access to me through our community coaching platform. I'm constantly adding to it and improving it, so go check it out. Also, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.